this might be a tired example. Some people might roll their eyes a bit, but I think the growth in the gravel world is really cool.
Mm.
A lot of cool events coming out of that. I think that we're going through a bit of a dark era in the US in terms of road cycling. Like road is really dead here. It's really sad to say, but it is so dead. I mean, there's so few high level races to do. And that's unfortunate to see. And I think that's a product of many different factors.
What do you
The
think are
Lance
some of the
era,
biggest ones?
drove people to road. And then of course, all the things happened with Lance that happened. And then it fizzled out a bit. I think congestion of roads and crowding of cycling popular areas has driven road cyclists off the road and onto gravel. That certainly happened in the Front Range in Colorado, where I live. No question. People are getting hit all the time. And so
Mm.
people just choose to ride their bikes on roads where there are less cars, which
Mm.
is probably a good thing in many ways. And that necessitates, it doesn't necessitate a gravel bike. You know, people, old school people are, oh, I used to ride these same roads on my road bike.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you were less comfortable doing it. So I also used to go up my local climbs in a 3921, you know, because that was the smallest gear we had. But
My friend who
um,
was in France was like, if you're, I was like, you race with a 25 all the time? He's like, dude, if you're in more than 25, you're not racing. And I was like, oh, it's so hardcore.
I don't even own a bike with only a 25 on it anymore. Yeah, but I live in Boulder, so anyway.
Yeah.
Also I'm 50, so there's that. But I think that's exciting to see that part of cycling growth and that community come together. And I think there's a cool thing about gravel where you can start a race with Peter Stettner or Nathan Haas and be on the start line with them. I mean, even though you're 300 riders behind them, most likely, or maybe more,
Mm-hmm.
that's still kind of neat. We'll
Mm-hmm.
see how much that changes in the coming years, because right now you can't do that on the road so much anymore. That's cool. I think that we're starting to see hopefully a distillation of devices. In the last 10 years, we've seen this explosion of gizmos come out, and some of them have been worthwhile and given us insights. And often other ones have been like, what is this thing? We don't need this. So hopefully we're seeing a crystallization of what data actually moves the dial for athletes and what doesn't. Hopefully that doesn't come at the expense of intuitive understanding and perceived exertion, which are still, no matter what metric you're tracking, is always going to be, metrics feed understanding. I'll say it that way. They feed intuition. That's the proper order of operations. You don't worship the metric.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm also excited for, like, it's cool to see the sport evolve in ways that make it safer for athletes, which may be maybe a bit of an odd thing to say, but we have seen instances in Europe, in particular in road racing, where people are just doing dumb stuff, and finally promoters are starting to come to their senses. You know, it's like the next wave of, like, it's probably around 1992 or something, where they finally passed helmet laws in the World Tour Peloton.
Mm.
Back then was the Pro Tour Peloton. It's the next wave of that. The other day we saw that finish line crash at the Giro where Cavendish slid across the line on his shoulder.
Yeah.
And one of the comments the commentators made in the coverage I watched was, well, that crash with the old style barriers, it would have been a lot worse because the barriers might have exploded into the group and caused this huge pileup,
Mm.
right? That's maybe a weird thing to say that I'm happy about, but I think bit by bit we're making progress in those types of things. And the fact is, cycling is a weird ass sport, man. Like, it's been around forever. And we used to ride bomb down mountains at 55 miles an hour with nothing more than a hairnet. And slowly, a little bit, we're starting to figure out, like, this isn't the best idea always. Like, human bodies are really fragile. So we need to be cautious about these things. And so I'd like to see progress being made in that, because no one wants to see an athlete, you know, run into a fence post and shatter a femur or worse. That's just not ideal. On the other hand, we all love the sport, and we love the fact that there's something really romantic about ripping down a huge Alp or a Rocky Mountain descent or a North Carolina descent.